Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today with Women Have Needs Too by LindaQ TV. Today, we are talking to a breast cancer survivor. We are celebrating October Breast Cancer Awareness, and we want to take this time out to speak to a survivor. And this particular human being happens to be very dear and close to me. She is a 22-year survivor. At the age of 25, she was diagnosed. So there you go, Bobbie. I just blew your age. Sorry, you can't fake that you're 22 anymore. Sorry about that. Anyway, Bobbie, I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your crazy day to be with us and share your story. The purpose of Women Have Needs Too is to inspire and empower women to live their fullest life. And, there are times in each woman's life that things happen, there's a bump in the road. Sometimes there's a brick wall. And if anybody knows you, and anybody who does know you knows that you've had the bumps, you've had the brick wall, and you've had the steamroller. I've lived with this journey with you, and I'm looking forward to you sharing your story with our audience. So thank you for being so open and taking this opportunity to share it with us.
I appreciate that, and always appreciate a moment that I get to spend with you. I used to, when I started in this journey, I used to say that, my story is unique, but now, 22 years later, my story is very similar to so many stories that you hear.
Yeah.
I was 25 when I was diagnosed. I found my cancer by self-exam. It was difficult to find a doctor that would take me seriously and hear my concerns and not consider me a hypochondriac. But luckily, my mom was in the industry. She was a mammographer. She had worked with surgeons, and just, I think, out of giving her a peace of mind and doing her a favor, they investigated further and they found that I had cancer.
Probably
And it was a
saved your
shock.
life.
Well, and it was a shock. I remember coming out of surgery and hearing my doctor, who was also the father of a dear friend, explain to the nurse that he just didn't know how to tell my mom. And I knew in that moment, that they didn't know I was listening, or that I was as aware as I was. But I knew that I had to act surprised and be strong all in the same time. And it's funny because at no point did I ever feel like that was more than a defining moment in God's purpose for me and my journey, and starting to lay, the road to that journey. I was in the NFL at the time. So I was an NFL cheerleader diagnosed with cancer. It was not something that they ran up the flagpole or they were necessarily eager to share. They kind of rejected the information. And again, is it true? How could it be? Because at 25 years old, you just didn't have cancer back then. It was in 1998. So fast forward, I've had approximately 26 surgeries as a result of being diagnosed so young. And early on, the treatment and the therapy was slash and burn.
And when was your last surgery, Bobbie? I know when it was, but let's share it with the audience.
December of last year.
Okay,
December
so let's go back. So 1998, was that your first surgery?
1998 was August 1998 was my first surgery.
22 years later, due to the same breast cancer, not reoccurring?
No, not reoccurring.
So it was still another surgery.
More surgeries. I had radiation first, and I was adamant about not allowing the NFL to shut me down or keep me off the field, despite whether it was the right decision or the wrong decision. We could debate that all day long, but I refused to miss a practice and to miss a game. So ironically, there came a point where I'd finished therapy. It was 7 weeks of radiation, and I had my game. It was Sunday, and it was during a halftime show, and it just the power hit me. The word was in my head, and it was, "You're done. You made your point. Now walk away." And literally during that halftime show, I dropped my pom poms and walked across the field and quit.
Whew,
that's just how I quit. And at that time, I decided, okay, what is it that I need to do? How do I need to educate young people? How do I need to stand on the highest mountain and shout that this is not just a disease for older women? And the earlier you catch it, the better chance of survival. So fast forward, I had a bilateral mastectomy. I had secondary issues in ovary and uterine, and so I've, as my daughter would say, I cleaned out the house. But again, God's will, as it is, doctors were emphatic that I would not be able to have kids. And I have a 17-year-old who defines every bit of what you would expect or what you would hope for as a parent. She constantly continues to surprise me, and she's just like my little lighthouse. She's the smartest human I know.
She is.
And
And she gives you reason to live, right? And be.
she not just a reason to live, but she reminds me how important it is to define for yourself what you're going to do
Yeah.
and how you're going to do it. And we take all the information that we have from science and doctors, but ultimately, it is your life. And doctors practice medicine. They practice medicine. They're educated to practice. They are beyond that. They are human beings. And I've been blessed with some really good ones, and I've been, cursed
Tortured.
with some really bad ones. So, in 2011, I had a tear to my chest wall where the implant tore away from the actual lining of the chest wall. And that was a case of a bad one. I didn't have insurance. I had been kicked out of my insurance program by Obamacare, ironically, because it wasn't for pre-existing, it was gap in coverage. And he left me in a state that was worse than before I ever had cancer. I was very underweight. I had skin attached to my bone. The irony of that situation is that I had to pay cash for my surgery. I ordered a check from Money Market to cover the balance that I didn't have in my savings account. And because the check didn't arrive before the day of the surgery, like literally I had 3 days to plan for this because it was life-threatening, he didn't show up. So luckily, they're prepping me for surgery. My mom was there, livid. I just remember her running out of the room, and my mom doesn't cuss if she stepped in it. And I thought she was absolutely going to burn down the joint. So she paid the remaining balance, which at that point was like $800. In comparison to the larger bill, nothing. And then I had to sit and wait for the doctor to show up and allow him to operate on me because I had to have this implant removed and my chest wall repaired. So that would be the wall that I hit later to be run over by the steamroller. But again, in the darkest times and in the deepest moments that you're forced to fall back on what you believe and why you believe.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how do you go from these tormenting experiences, these life-threatening experiences, these experiences that the light at the end of the tunnel is there, and then all of a sudden it's dark. And how do you keep that attitude of not just survival but living your life? How let's talk to our viewers about how do you keep that? Not that you have that 24/7 for the last 22 years. We have those setbacks, but how do you turn that leaf? How do you turn that table? How do you turn that head and say, I am better than this, and I am going to beat this, and I am going to have a positive attitude, and I am going to forge forward? How do you do it? Because you have continued to do it time after time, year after year. I've watched you.
I am unapologetic about my faith, and I think that first and foremost, we all fall to fear, whatever that fear is, and that fear is fear that we create. And the only way to relieve yourself of that fear is to believe in something bigger than yourself. And maybe it's my God, maybe it's your God, or whatever that is. I just hope and pray that people are accountable to something higher and know that there is something bigger that gives us purpose.
Well said.
And not to say that there are not moments where you absolutely need to have a pity party. You got to stop. You got to feel sorry for yourself. You got to feed your feelings. You have to grieve, because that's what it is. but you cannot spend too much time in that place, because the closer you get to that side, the further and harder it pulls you. So you really need to, and that's about surrounding yourself with people who believe the same way or respect the way you believe, whether they agree or they don't agree. But I voted people off my island many a times. I had to clear house, and it meant a few less people at the dinner table or on a Saturday night. But the people that were there, they mattered, they got it,
Why did
and it
some of those
wasn't
people
about
have to get voted off the
serving.
island?
Well, because they are they don't reciprocate. You
Hmm.
know, there are people who
Takers,
need
not
that
givers.
energy. Not even just givers, because I don't approach friendships or relationships based on what they can give me, um, but someone that's able to recognize what you have to offer them and they don't take advantage of that,
Mm,
um, is the important part. Whether or not they reciprocate is on them, but I'm not going to be taken advantage of
right,
by someone who just, sees something that I have to offer and doesn't, and just takes and goes. I don't
right,
have time for that.
right.
I just don't. And again, that's been kind of a lesson in our house, and my daughter has watched it, and now she emulates that with people in her life.
Yeah,
It doesn't mean that you're not a good friend to those people. You're there, but you just don't make yourself readily available to be used.
right.
You don't wish them well, and that's true of family too. Sometimes family doesn't get it, and and in my case, I lost my father when I was young. I was 2 years before I was diagnosed. He was 48 years old. He died of a brain tumor. So everybody in the family deals with those kind of tragedies differently, and you have
Right,
to respect that. But it doesn't mean that you have to tolerate anything negative, or,
right.
you know, um, when you have 29 surgeries, people get really used to you being in the hospital, or checking in, and so they forget. Oh, Bobbie's at the hospital. Okay, well, just have her call me later. It's like, I'm
Right.
still in the hospital.
Yeah.
So that can be challenging, but everybody deals with it differently, and you have to respect that.
Kind of
And
like you went to the
it's,
convenience store to get bread, right?
well, I think the more resilience you show, the more that people just expect that you'll continue to
Bounce
be that
back.
way, and they forget that
You're
you
going
still need
through
to
a
get,
lot.
yeah,
Let's talk
yeah. And I
about
still,
you became a national patient advocate. Let's talk about how that came about and what exactly that means.
well, so I kind of got thrust into that role because I was young and because I was in the NFL. So I spoke pretty regularly to young groups and talked about breast cancer awareness, the importance of self-exam, and the message was very different then than it is now. As I've gotten older, I don't identify as a survivor. Um,
What do you identify with?
I, I don't. I don't label myself.
Good
You
for
know, I
you.
I had breast cancer, but it's not. It doesn't define me.
Right.
And the reason why I don't call myself a survivor is because I have witnessed and engaged with so many women who have fought harder than I ever had to fight, and they have lost their battle, and that doesn't make them
Mm,
any less um, of a cancer victim as because they didn't survive. The survivor to me means that I had something they didn't, and I don't believe that's true.
mm,
I believe that cancer is an ugly beast, and we
yeah.
do the best that we can, and we pray for the best, but it is relentless. It doesn't care about your race, your ethnicity, your socioeconomic status. Some of those factors play into access to resources, which is where my shift went from awareness to helping women find access to resources, because I had been a national spokesperson. I had lobbied on behalf of huge cancer institutes. And when I became sick in 2011, nobody was there. Nobody. Um, and so again, you start to take note, and you evaluate. And so grassroots is where it's at for me, and just reminding people that you don't have to walk 60 miles and get blisters and lose toenails to prove a point. Because what really matters to a lot of patients is having someone drop off groceries or pick up the kids and take them to the park so that they can actually take a nap, and know that their kids are safe. There's so many intimate, small things that people going through treatment need, and it doesn't cost anything.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where my focus has been more recently. And now I'm at a point where I have to decide what's next. I got very bent out of shape about the pink washing and where dollars went when they were supposedly collected for breast cancer. I spent a lot of time at the federal level, Federal Trade Commission, and the Judiciary Committee at the U.S. House, and going after groups that were erroneously saying they were raising money for breast cancer and spending it elsewhere. And we made a lot of progress in that fight. Many of those groups were forced to make change, which is what I set out to do. So now I have to decide what is next. And I mean, my heart, I pray about it, but my heart feels like it is that tangible one-on-one grassroots type advocacy. So what that looks like, I'm not sure. I don't need to stand on a podium and tell people how to feel or how to be great, because I'm like, no, you know me. I am like nobody else. I'm just like everybody else, I should say. My
Yeah.
story is not that different. So
So, you've said a little bit about what somebody on the outside looking in can do for that person who's going through what you've been through. Take the groceries, run errands, that type of thing. Anything else that you can advise to somebody who has not had it and been through it, and what they can do for a friend?
ask them what they can do. And when they say, "Oh, I don't need your help," my comeback to that is, if it were me, you would help me, because it makes you feel good to do that. So don't take that away from me. Let me do that for you.
Yeah.
And then they have no argument. And the easier it becomes to ask for help, the lighter you begin to feel, because when we're sick, especially as women, we tend to carry this burden. Like, you get a badge when it's over.
Yeah.
You know, you don't get a badge, you don't get a medal. You get to survive, you get to
Right.
live, which
You
is
get to live.
incredible. But carrying that burden all on your own is only doing yourself a disservice. And those people that want to help you for the same reasons why you would help them.
Right. So is
And that
that your,
time will come.
yeah,
Let them help you. The time will come where you'll be able to reciprocate. I guarantee it, in some form or fashion. But in the moment, you're not weak for needing help.
exactly. Very good
You're
point.
not.
Is that your biggest advice for somebody who may be going through it or might go through it
So
in the future, is don't be afraid to ask for help or take the help that is offered to you?
that I would also say that your body is a temple, and you really only have control of two things. That is how you treat other people and what you put in your body. Beyond that, you have absolutely no control. So if you need to focus on control, which is what we do when we're going through treatment, focus on how you treat people and what you put in your body. I think it's a big part of post cancer too. What do I do next? I've done treatment and I'm in remission, but what do I do next? And really, you'd be surprised how often when you're nice to somebody, even if they're cranky, you get a smirk or a smile back, and that feeling is contagious as everything else, you
Yeah.
know. And so, why not spread that?
Yeah.
But
Spread
yeah,
the joy.
yeah, for sure. There's not enough time to keep that bitter stuff held in. And
So,
find somebody to talk to, you know? And a lot of times I get calls from breast cancer patients who I never meet. I have a wonderful lady in, I think she's in Arkansas, and I probably will never meet her. I was talking to her about once a week. She went in and had a mastectomy. Her case is very advanced. Her diagnosis is not favorable, but she has some really big life events coming up, a daughter getting married. Of course, we have COVID. And it was easier for her to reach out to someone she didn't know and
right.
talk openly and honestly. So sometimes patients will call me and they'll start to explain what's going on, and I'll refer them to someone else that I know that does what I do, just because they're maybe more likely in age, or they have the same type of cancer, or the last treatment I went through was so many years ago. I can't speak to somebody who's going through treatment right now when they talk about chemo and side effects.
Right. It's different.
Generally speaking, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, but I will connect them with somebody who's
Yeah.
more recently gone through treatment. So, yeah.
Unbelievable. Well, I know your journey has been a long one, and it's been held with some sunlight, a lot of sunlight and rainbows,
Mhm.
and there have been some, pitfalls as well. And you are surrounded by some some good family and some good friends, and
Yeah.
that warms my heart. And if you were to say, I mean, for people who preventative wise, what
Mhm.
advice do you have for prevention? And we'll close with that.
Gosh, that's really hard because we used to know conclusively that a healthy lifestyle prevented cancer. Now we have so many environmental factors that play a part. Obviously, health, diet, sugar intake. We know all those things are bad. There's a tremendous amount of evidence of the effectiveness of medical marijuana on people going through therapy and with advanced cancers because it blocks sugar absorption. So we've made a lot of headway. Do your research. Ask a second opinion.
Hmm.
No doctor knows it all, and any doctor that is offended is not the doctor you want to be with.
Yeah, good for you.
I mean, it just you are in control of that your journey, and you've got to know that who that doctor is and who that
Yeah.
person is, um, that you're on the same page. But I was healthy. I'm not predisposed. I had the genetic test. I don't have the gene, so there are those lifestyle things that contribute to a healthier life. I think just even mentally, they lead us in a better place.
Hmm.
But it's just a hard one. I'm dealing with a lot of water contamination issues as a result to cancer outbreaks
Really?
in our area. Really? And what I'm learning is terrifying. Doesn't matter what you do.
Right.
Doesn't we are running out of potable water that's not contaminated. So, this is the world that we're in. But your attitude it matters. And again, we can't
I
walk
think
away.
attitude is it's right on. It's like 99% of recovery, don't you think? I mean,
In
uh,
fear, you cannot live in fear.
right.
Because your mom had it, you cannot live in fear that you're next.
Yeah.
If you want to get tested, if you think that you will live your best life because you have a prophylactic mastectomy, you go, you do that. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to do what's right for you. You
Right.
really do.
Good
And
advice.
I'm an advocate of our choices and how it is that we treat
Hmm.
ourselves. So,
Hmm. Well, thank you. You have such wonderful advice, and I know you've been through this journey and you've learned so much, and you are that national patient advocate that is always out there working, and you're continuing to work, like you say, with the water, the potable water. Your work never stops, Bobbie, and you're out there to help that next woman and prevent that next woman from falling with it. And I understand, and
yeah.
we're lucky to have you in this world.
Well, you know what? And I mean, my grandma. God can't drive a parked car, so make yourself available. And the darkest times are the teachable times.
Yes,
We don't learn anything when everything is going well. How much do you really learn
right.
when everything is right? It's when it's
True.
wrong that
True.
we all of a sudden pay attention. So,
That's so true. Well, thank you
hmm
for inspiring and empowering our women viewers to live their fullest life and, look about prevention. Take another look at what they're putting into their body and the choices that they're making and how they're treating other people because, all in all,
hmm
that's going to give us all a healthier life and an outlook on life. And I
so,
appreciate that. And
yeah.
for our viewers out there, visit womenhaveneeds2.com. You can find our apparel, which Bobbie will be receiving shortly. And
Thank you.
this is our logo, and womenhaveneeds2.com. We'll be coming out with some new shirts shortly. So if you've been a visitor to our website and want to keep coming back for the new stuff, come on back. They make wonderful gifts for the women in your lives. So thank